At some point in your life, something unsettling begins to happen. People don't react to you the way they used to, not because you became weaker, not because you failed, but because you stopped needing them. You notice it in the silence after you speak, in the tension that wasn't there before, in the way your calm presence feels heavier than someone else's aggression. And that's when the truth starts to surface. People don't fear loud power. They fear independence. If this already feels uncomfortable, stay. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe now, because this isn't entertainment. This is a mirror. The Sigma is not a role you choose. It's not a personality you adopt. It's not an aesthetic or a trend. The Sigma is a result of observation, of disappointment, of understanding patterns most people never question. The Sigma didn't wake up one day wanting to be alone. He arrived there after realizing how conditional most connections are, how performative most conversations feel, and how much noise exists purely to hide emptiness. When you see that clearly, your behavior changes automatically. You speak less, not because you're afraid to speak, but because you no longer waste words. You withdraw, not because you lack confidence, but because presence loses value when it's always available. People love the alpha because the alpha makes sense to them. He's visible. He's loud. He announces who he is. The alpha plays the game openly. Leadership, competition, dominance. You know where you stand with him. You can admire him. You can challenge him. You can oppose him. But you understand him. The Sigma refuses that framework entirely. He doesn't compete. He doesn't lead. He doesn't follow. He steps outside the system. And the human mind hates that. The brain is wired to categorize. Leader, follower, threat, ally. When someone doesn't fit any category, the mind panics. A silent man in a room full of noise is more disturbing than a loud man demanding attention, because silence creates a vacuum, and the mind fills that vacuum with fear. When someone talks too much, you feel in control. You can read them, predict them, dismiss them. But when someone watches more than he speaks, doesn't react emotionally, doesn't rush to explain himself, your thoughts start turning against you. What is he thinking? Why isn't he reacting? Does he see through me? Does he know something I don't? The Sigma never says a word, yet your mind spirals. This is not accidental, and it's not manipulation. The Sigma doesn't use silence as a tactic. Silence is simply the natural state of someone who understands. He doesn't need to justify himself, because justification is often insecurity in disguise. Those who explain themselves constantly are usually trying to convince, not others, but themselves. The Sigma is already convinced, and that quiet certainty is unforgivable in a world addicted to validation. Society rewards performance, visibility, reaction. Look at me. Approve of me. Confirm my value. Anyone who refuses to participate in this ritual is labeled arrogant, cold, or dangerous. Not because they are, but because they expose the illusion. People say they value honesty, but only when honesty is soft, filtered, comfortable. The Sigma offers none of that. He doesn't attack. He doesn't confront. He simply exists unapologetically, and that alone destabilizes fragile egos. Here is the part most people never admit. People don't fear the Sigma because he's stronger. They fear him because he cannot be controlled. You can't bait him with approval. You can't weaken him with rejection. You can't provoke him into emotional chaos. He doesn't move from reaction. He moves from decision. And people who act from decision are rare. Everything rare is threatening. Most social dynamics rely on emotional leverage, guilt, fear, desire, need. The Sigma removes himself from all of it. He doesn't offer you access to his internal world, and he doesn't ask for access to yours. This isn't superiority, it's self-sufficiency. And self-sufficiency terrifies people who depend on external validation to survive. There's a myth that the Sigma lives comfortably, that solitude is peaceful, that independence feels empowering all the time. That's a lie. The Sigma didn't choose clarity because it felt good. He chose it because illusion became unbearable. Seeing people for who they are, not who you hope they are, is painful. Understanding that most bonds are transactional is painful. Realizing how much noise exists purely to avoid self-reflection is painful. But the Sigma chooses painful clarity over comforting lies. Loneliness for the Sigma is not the absence of people. It's the absence of dependency. He can stand alone without collapsing. He can be among others without dissolving into them. That balance is rare, and rarity always triggers suspicion. The Sigma doesn't compete, and that's the deepest insult to the ego. Competition acknowledges relevance. By refusing to compete, the Sigma silently says, You're not part of my calculation. That statement is unbearable for those whose identity depends on comparison. So they reinterpret him. Cold, arrogant, emotionally damaged, anything to protect their self-image. Over time, the Sigma notices a pattern. The quieter he becomes, the more tension appears, the less he explains himself. The more others try to provoke him, the less he engages. The more people feel the urge to pull him back, sometimes aggressively. That's when the final lesson emerges. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every attack deserves response. Not every opinion matters. The Sigma doesn't stay silent because he has nothing to say. He stays silent because he understands the cost of speaking. Those who want to understand him will feel it without explanation. Those who don't never will. So he chooses silence again, not as avoidance, but as selection. At this stage, fear becomes irrelevant. Whether they fear him or admire him no longer matters. The Sigma is no longer managing perception. He's governing himself. And self-mastery is the most threatening form of power. If this feels heavy, if it unsettles you, that's not accidental. Something in you recognizes this truth. And if you've made it this far, you're not here for distraction. You're here for understanding. If you're not subscribed, subscribe not to support me, but to acknowledge that you choose depth over noise,